Welcome at this edition of Beek Talks. And today the topic of our conversation will be soybean meal and how to look at it completely differently. My name is Vincent. I'm editor of Beek Progress and I'm joined today by Dr. Thomas D'Alfonso, Worldwide Animal Nutrition Focus Area Director at the US Soybean Export Council. We'll give the concept of crude protein some more attention today. After all, measuring crude protein has long been the method of assessing soybean meal value. But should it? There could be so much more to assessing soybean meal. So what else is there? And what could we learn from other assessing methods? Welcome, Tom. If you work with nutritionists or producers around the world, how do you see that they are currently evaluating the value of their soybean meal in their diets?
Well, fortunately, most nutritionists have moved beyond crude protein and are looking at the essential amino acids, their digestibility, the digestible energy in the soybean meal, and in particular the net energy. And we're learning that soybean meal has derived from US soy, has very high levels of digestibility and consistency. And when you formulate on these values, you can really lower the cost of feed and improve the quality and consistency of the feed and the profitability of the animal performance.
I see. And is there in particular something that is being missed?
Uh, Big time. There's two topics here that are unfortunately commonly overlooked with soybean meal. The first is that if you only look at crude protein and you don't look at the essential amino acids and their digestibility, you're really missing out. So the first is the tendency for the industry for more than 100 years now to measure crude protein in inaccurate ways. We measure actually nitrogen and we multiply that nitrogen by 6.25 to get an estimate of crude protein. But these methods are very old and they're very inaccurate. That's why I first started describing the essential amino acids and their digestibility as being very important. But the second thing that we're finding is that soybean meal brings with it a whole number of functional compounds that benefit animal health. These include polyphenols, terpenoids, bioactive peptides, bioactive lipids. These all help the immune system. They help during respiratory ailments. They are anti inflammatory and they lead to good animal health and performance that we are not taking into account when we formulate the feed.
I see. So all in all, net energy estimates from international reference tables are actually underestimates. Could you explain why that gap exists? And could you provide the numbers under real commercial conditions?
Sure, sure. Well, this work on net energy goes back to the late 1980s and 1990s. In fact, I'm very familiar with the work, and it was a very good effort at the time to balance the estimates of net energy by including the cost of excreting undigested amino acids and the cost of digesting protein as a negative factor in calculating net energy. It's not that these equations were wrong, it's that the genetics have changed, and I'm talking about the animal genetics. So, what we have found is the modern pig genetics are able to digest these nutrients much more efficiently. It's been part of the gain in feed efficiency by the genetics companies over the last couple of decades. That means that the animal does not expend as much energy to metabolize the amino acids, essential and non-essential. We're finding that for that reason, soybean meal has higher net energy. And the other is differentiating soybean meal derived from US soy allows you to take into account the higher levels of sucrose, the higher levels of digestible sugars that haven't been counted in the past. So these two reasons, there's a bigger benefit from higher sucrose in soybean meal derived from US soy, and there's higher digestibility of the amino acids, essential and non-essential, that mean that the net energy equations need to be re-examined.
I see. So there's a relationship between crude protein content and amino acids and energy content in soybean meal. So how does understanding that relationship help nutritionists formulate their diets?
Right, very good. So again, I mentioned that crude protein is not measured accurately. If we just measure nitrogen. In fact, I just came back from Indonesia where we're doing a trial, and we looked at measuring all of the amino acids, essential and non-essential, and adding them up. And we found that soybean meal derived from US soy had higher total amino acid content when we measured it this way. But the differences were not so great if you just looked at crude protein, which means you're just looking at nitrogen. So again, by measuring what the animal requirement is, and those are the requirements for lysine, for other essential amino acids, methionine, threonine, tryptophan, etc., you're better able to formulate the diet at least cost. You're better able to meet the animal's nutritional needs, and you're better able to get the animals to grow to their genetic potential when you take into account the amino acid composition of the most important protein ingredient in the diet, that being soybean meal derived from US soy.
I see. So you mentioned that health promoting molecules can help metabolic efficiency in the field. So what does that mean in practice for a producer?
So, for an animal producer, they may see digestive ailments, inflammation, or respiratory ailments. And what we found in the research over the last 5 years, really, is that these bioactive functional compounds in soy help to alleviate respiratory symptoms, help to create a healthy digestive system that performs more efficiently, that is better suited for animals that experience heat stress. So during the summer months, when you see the summer dip in consumption, the dip in rate of growth, that can be recovered by balancing the diet with high levels of soybean meal in the diet to maintain digestive health, to get all of the nutrients you can from the ingredients, and to see better performance and consistency of the animals as a result of these bioactive functional compounds that I mentioned.
Okay, and we only have a short amount of time, so if there would be one thing that you want a nutritionist or a producer to take away and apply in practice tomorrow, what would that be?
Uh, that is to put in a minimum amount of soybean meal in the diet, to look at the research on these bioactive functional compounds, and to take into account that having a good level, 20-25% of soybean meal or more, in your hog diet brings health benefits and performance benefits that have been demonstrated in research and in commercial trials. We're well beyond, as nutritionists, formulating on crude protein. We've been formulating on digestible amino acids for many years now, many decades even. But it's also time to look at these functional compounds as healthy nutrition that is provided by choosing soybean meal as the core ingredient in the diet. And that means high quality, consistent soybean meal derived from US soy.
Thank you very much, Tom. That was fantastic, and I think your answer summed up exactly what we would like our viewers and listeners to remember. And with that, this episode of Pig Talks has come to an end. Thank you all for being with us. Thank you, Tom, for being with us. And hopefully we'll see you around at the next episode of Pig Talks. Bye-bye.